Okay, let me start again. Welcome everybody to our critique evening. I'll do a brief meeting and then we can get started with the critiques. The one thing which I wanted to bring up is the fact that with our next meeting, the competition on water in any form, the key thing is the water has to be the main subject. If there's something else in your image that could be mistaken for the main subject, you may want to reconsider entering it. So take a look at your images before you put them in. Then on January 29th, that's Monday, we're going to be doing our winter workshop. And this is going to be totally different from any workshop we've done before. It's going to be encompassing two things. And Jackie Dickert is going to be doing the program for the workshop. And so it's going to be encompassing some light painting and some long exposures. Two things that a lot of people have said they'd like to try, but have never really had the opportunity to do it. And I'll talk a little bit more about some of the opportunities that you can use to create your own light painting or long exposures. And that's all that I have right this minute. So you want to do the ones on PCP first?
Yeah, that works.
Okay.
And I don't think I can change the name. It might be I read that there could be a setting that you control of
I
whether
just
somebody can
changed
change.
it for you.
Oh, okay. Oh yeah, there it is. Perfect. All right. Thank you. Let me share my screen here.
Are you sharing?
Yep, I am sharing. Can you see it or no?
No.
Nope.
Try again. How about now?
There it goes.
Okay. All right. And can you see this?
Yes.
Okay. So this is Charlene's picture. And this is
Okay,
called
now
Karen.
Charlene is not on the Zoom tonight. So
Should we skip over ones? I mean, I guess the whole point is for that
no,
person.
we can, I mean, we can talk about it, and she can view these at any point that she has an opportunity.
That's true.
The first thing that I'm going to say about it is there is way too much empty space above the bird. It's unnecessary and takes away from what the subject is. The other thing is the light colors of the leaves are just really distracting. My eyes keep leaving the bird and going to the leaves. Does anybody else want to say anything?
Yeah, I especially find the leaf under the beak very, very distracting. It's if that could be cloned out, that would certainly make the separation between the leaf and the beak. And I think the whites on the head might be a little bit blown out.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all that. Definitely a little too much sky. That was one of the first things that popped into my head. Chances are this was already probably cropped significantly, as a lot of these shots are. So maybe she was trying not to go too much, so as to not lose too much resolution. But yeah, I think it's definitely a little too much empty space. The background is a little bit noisy. It's not too bad, but with noise reduction software these days, especially built right into Lightroom or Camera Raw, you can pretty much eliminate that. So it's worth thinking about. Also, on the very right, behind the tail, there's a tiny piece of green leaf that I would definitely clone out. Maybe even clone out like the whole branch so it doesn't, not the whole branch, but that little piece of branch to the right of the tail so it doesn't kind of stick out to the edge.
Charlene just joined us.
Okay.
Hi, Charlene.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, we've been talking about your image.
I'm sorry I'm late. I actually fell asleep.
That's why you
Did
have
you
an
have,
alarm on your iPhone. I did the same thing.
did you have a question about your image?
Yeah, I guess, you know, looking at this, the way because it's sitting on top of this tree or bush or whatever, it just seems to be a little too busy, I guess, for competition type of picture.
That's one of the things we were talking about. We were also talking that there's a lot of unnecessary background in the top of the image that you could crop to draw attention more on the bird.
Okay. I understand what you're saying, and I think one of the problems I have with that is, I guess, keeping a ratio on your picture. Like if you were going to frame it, like when you're using the crop tool, and if you have it either constrained or open so that you can close all the, in other words, you keep it. I think I'm
Keep the aspect ratio closed.
you know what I'm saying.
We know what you're talking about.
Okay.
Yeah.
And looking at this, I would say that it's probably a 1 by 1, square. Now, if I were to take off the top, then if you were going to frame it, it would have to be like custom framed or something, because you're no longer have that, like it wouldn't fit into that ratio.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I go
go ahead.
through that a lot, that kind of thought process. And I have come to the conclusion that if I'm cropping something for a competition, a camera club competition, I think a little bit differently. I think in terms of the subject being the central focus, and cropping as much as possible. And yeah, if I'm going to frame it, I want to take a frame off the shelf. I don't want a custom frame. So I get that. I just put on a different hat whenever I crop for a camera competition, and that's, the judges are looking for something completely different. So that's my perspective.
Yeah, which I agree, but
Yeah, I agree with that.
Right.
Yeah, and Lenny, I do the exact same thing.
You can make two versions though. You can keep one. You can just go back and keep one untouched version if you do want to frame it, and do one for competition by doing the crops.
So when I process my images, I have fallen into the trap of cropping it tightly and then doing a lot of work, maybe let's say in Photoshop, and then realizing, oh my goodness, I need to go back. So what I do is I do a lot of whatever the cleanup work I need to do, I do it on a larger image, and then I crop in Lightroom. You can crop any way you want, but do all your work and then crop as many ways as you want and make a special crop for the judges.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. And, the other thing we were discussing and should be fairly easy to handle is to maybe take a brush and just try to tone down some of those brighter leaves. There's some harsh highlights on some of those leaves. You could just take a little soft brush in Lightroom and tone those down a little bit. There could be a couple that are, most of them I don't think are really blown out per se, but there could be a couple that are. And for those, you could even just clone with like maybe 50% opacity. You could clone from another one, from another part that's darker, just to, to tone it down. Because you won't be able to recover the highlights that are actually blown out.
Yeah, and the other thing we were saying was the leaf, especially under the beak, is kind of blending into the beak and the bird, and it's distracting. So I would definitely clone that out. And maybe take the highlights down on the top of the head.
But overall, there's really nice detail on the bird.
Yeah.
It's sharp.
Yeah.
I think it has a lot going for it.
Yeah. And Ryan mentioned a little piece of leaf on the right side by the tail.
Yeah, I would clone those out as well.
Yeah.
And that's about it.
Okay.
And if you wanted to, I don't know if you have any noise reduction software, but you could, the background's a little bit noisy. It's not too bad, but with modern software, you can pretty much smooth that out 100% while keeping all the detail on the bird and everything. So another thing to think about.
Charlene, what software are you using to process?
This is Lightroom.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, Lightroom has built-in noise reduction. That's amazing now. It's just as good as Topaz.
Takes longer though.
Yeah, that's true. Well, once I upgraded my video card, it made a tremendous difference.
Okay.
All right. So, did you have any other questions before we move on? It's a good shot though. It really is. Like there's a lot of detail there in that bird. So
Yeah, the bird is gorgeous.
yeah, and I like how the light is hitting the eye. The light's kind of almost like a spotlight on the face, which is nice.
Yeah.
All right, I will move to the next, which is also Charlene's, and this is called Grasshopper. So for me, and this is, really hard to avoid, I'm sure, based on where these guys live, but it's definitely on the busier side. You looks like you were really wide open, so you had nice shallow depth of field to blur out a lot of the grass in the background, but between the highlights, and just the strands of grass, it definitely is a little busy. Maybe cropping in further. It's kind of similar. It was probably your same mindset. It looks like another one-to-one crop, but I would definitely consider cropping off some of the top to maybe bring a little more attention to the grasshopper. Maybe even put a bit of a vignette, which will also help kind of draw the eye to the grasshopper.
Yeah, definitely.
You could also consider cloning out some of the really bright strands of grass, especially the one in the foreground that's leading right to his leg, his or her leg. but it's really sharp. Like, I mean, you
Yeah.
got really nice
And
detail
you
there.
got low, that's great.
Yeah. I don't know if anybody else has anything else.
Yeah, the sharpness on the grasshopper is great.
Yeah,
Just wish that all the surrounding leaves and whatever grasses weren't there so that you could see more of the grasshopper.
Mm.
Yeah.
I don't know that Lightroom masking would help, would be able to pick out the grasshopper from
Mm,
the background, but yeah, I don't,
probably not.
probably not, because the solution would be to just pick up the background and darken it a little bit. And try to blur it out a little bit, but I don't think Lightroom would be able to do that. And
No, but you could probably do it. You could probably do it with the brush that
yeah,
what's the term where it kind of looks for edges? Because you don't have to be super perfect about it in this case, I don't think. You could definitely, put a brush directly behind the grasshopper where there's a lot of white grass.
Do you
And
use Photoshop, Charlene?
Yes.
Oh yeah, this is probably doable in Photoshop by selecting subject and then cleaning it up. It might have some difficulty selecting all of the subject, but you can easily go in, select and mask, and then define your subject more precisely that way, and then darken the background. But I do agree that the level of busyness is something that the judge is going to pick up on.
Oh,
Again,
yeah. I mean,
I'm
that's-
assuming that this is you're looking for feedback for a camera club competition, and that's a whole different ball game. And I keep thinking of I wear different hats whenever I do my photos for the camera club versus non-camera club. And I think that the busyness is something that is definitely going to have an impact.
Now, I do a lot of masking in Photoshop, and Photoshop is probably going to be able to pick up on the upper body and the head. And the rest of it, you would have to go in and actually use a brush to mask it.
Yep, so I
That
could mask.
otherwise, I don't think there's enough contrast in the legs or the antenna for Photoshop to be able to pick up.
yeah, it blends with the background.
Yeah.
Yeah, and really, I mean, well, first of all, if you were to crop, a lot of that background would be gone. And then the main part of the background that needs attention is just that whitish area directly behind them. So I don't even know that you need, subject detection per se. I mean, you might grab his antenna a little bit, I guess, if you're not careful, but it's
will.
mostly just toning down that whitish area with a brush. I don't even know if it's necessary to, and like I said, I would probably just clone out the one in the foreground that's really bright. And you could even clone out some of the other ones too. Like if you look directly between the V of his antenna, there's a white triangular shape. I would just clone that out completely. I'd probably just lasso it and do content aware fill. I use content aware fill more than clone, to be honest with you, because it's for most things it works well and a little less noticeable usually. Yeah. Do you have any questions in particular?
Probably, I mean, I know that this is terribly busy, and I guess I probably picked it because it looks hopeless. But also sometimes with these colors, like the real light color in the background, it's so hard to make that darker in or I find it difficult, like there's no, unless you're using maybe color grading or something to kind of change the color of the yellow to something else. It's, you know, it just, I don't know. Just
Yeah, I mean, by definition, it's a lighter color than the bug. So yeah, even if you tone it down, it's still maybe going to draw a little bit of attention because it's just a lighter tone, where the bug is just brown. So, but I think just taking some exposure and highlight down, and it's hard to tell how much of that is truly blown out, because obviously if it's blown out, it's just going to turn it gray if you reduce the highlights and or
Right.
exposure. But that's where maybe some cloning comes in, or try to find them again on an overcast day, something like that.
I think that was overcast.
Oh, really?
There's another thing that you can try. And that is, instead of using either dodging or burning, to select a color, a darker color that's in the background of the image, and then use a brush with a low opacity to go over those very bright white areas. So you're actually putting some color into those areas. And since this is so jumbled with different greens and browns, it wouldn't really be that discernible that you're painting on your image. And that's another way to tone down areas that are overexposed.
All right, so I think I missed something there.
Where,
Gonna use a brush.
okay,
Color
instead
a
of
different color,
you-
like the brush is gonna have a different color to it.
what you do is, if you're in Photoshop, you first select a color, usually a darker color, that's also in your image. Then you take a soft, low opacity brush and make it small enough that you're not going to make big swatches, and just lightly go over some of the overexposed areas. And I'd probably use a darker green and turn those areas into a darker green. And that'll help blend some of your background and get rid of those areas that are very bright and burnt out.
Right, so you would want to use the eyedropper, Charlene, to grab that color.
Oh, sorry, I didn't say that.
It's okay.
All right, I'll give it a try.
All right, I will move to the next.
Okay.
Wendy's cactus tip. Is Wendy with us?
I don't think so. But we can talk about this.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my first reaction is, does make an interesting abstract.
Yeah.
It looks like it's got a lot of broken spikes.
Yeah. I mean, it does make an interesting abstract. There are some areas that are blown out that I wouldn't want to see in the final version of an abstract. And that,
I'm sorry.
anybody else?
Yeah, of course, the brights are,
Yeah,
it goes right to the bright, so
yeah.
they would have to be dealt with.
Yeah, I think the subject blends into the background a bit. And I guess it's partly because of the bright parts of the subject and then the bright parts of the background.
And then you've got
and
dark
it's-
parts too.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, I think the maker would have to decide whether they're going for a nature image or whether they're going for an abstract.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in general, big thing whenever you're doing these kind of macro shots or flowers or flower-like things is to really move around and try to find the cleanest background you possibly can. You know, it looks like there's all kinds of different stuff back there. I mean, it's really blurry, so you can't make out what it is, but clearly by the fact that there's all different colors and everything, there's a variation of background. If you could angle yourself so that you're only getting, say, more foliage in the background or something like that, so you're primarily seeing the greens, for instance, it would probably help. You know, sometimes it's possible, sometimes it's not. But a lot of, you know, up, down, you know, moving this, you know, half inch this way, half inch that way, little variations in your positioning can make a huge difference in what you see in the background. Sometimes getting further away, but zooming more, or vice versa, all those can have a huge impact on what you see in the background.
And I think you've also got to consider what aperture you're using to take the picture. Because if you're using a very shallow aperture, you're going to get the results where only your center section there is really in sharp focus. But if you used a different aperture, you might get more of the plant or whatever it is in focus, which might make a more interesting image.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I struggle with that myself with these kind of photos because I'm trying to get the background as blurred out as I possibly can, but then
Mhm.
you lose a lot of the actual subject as well. So it's kind of a tight dance. I mean, you can, if you have the means and knowledge for it, you can try to
focus there.
focus stack so that you stack to the point where you need and then have a really blurred out, you know, wide open aperture for the background.
Or use some flash.
Mm-hmm. All right, should we move
Okay.
on to the next?
Next.
Also Wendy's, red berries on a red stem.
I would, again, I'm distracted by the lighter parts of the image. I would just tone them down, but it looks, maybe tone down the reds a little bit.
Yeah, I like the composition on
Yeah,
this.
I do. That's nice.
Like how she did the slant of the plant coming in. I think that makes it interesting. And the stems to me look like tentacles.
Yeah.
And they kind of, they could have, you could almost see or imagine some movement in them. I would do a little darkening on the background, and I would bring down the brightness on the reds. It just seems a little bit too saturated.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and there might be a color cast. The background has kind of a bluish green
Bluish.
Yeah, it
look to
does.
it. Um,
Yeah.
but yet you have a lot of warm, obviously, on the foreground. So I'm not really sure. It's one of those, I can't tell you for sure whether it's too green, too blue, but I would probably play around um with the temperature and or tint and just see if there's a combination that looks a little better. But and then also with the depth of field, kind of same thing here. You got some of the berries in the foreground that are blurry, which I don't always have a problem
Yeah.
with. I'm not one of those people that like, oh, the whole flower or the whole whatever has to be in focus. But I think on this one, since they're all kind of, there's not one of them that's the main subject, they're all sort of equal. I would rather see most, if not all, the berries in focus.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I like the contrasting colors, the red contrasted with the green, regardless of the color cast. And I now see the color cast that you're talking about. In terms of the blurriness, I think it would be okay if it were more in the background, but the blurry ones are more in the foreground, at least from my perspective. I think that they're, yeah, on the bottom, they're
Yeah.
more in the foreground. And I
Yeah.
think that may be a little bit distracting to me and Judge.
Yeah, I think
You-
that's a
you
good
should-
point. If more of the blurry ones were toward the back, that would be a little
Yeah.
more natural.
Yeah.
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 And
I
it's really
also,
tough with macro, it really is.
I know.
yeah,
I think what happened was her point of focus was more towards the cluster that's up towards the upper right
right.
Hmm.
than it
Right.
was where the tentacles are coming out and the lower berries. And that's one of the things you have to watch when you're doing macro is where your focus point is.
Yeah, definitely.
And also there's enough contrast between the the subject and the background where it would be easy to select the background and deal with the background with the bluish cast, and the
Mhm.
Oh, definitely.
brighter images would be much easier to deal with in this image because you
Maybe.
can select it.
Yeah.
But
Mm.
I agree about the foreground. I mean, they could be dealt with also. I mean, you could also, the ones that are really distracting could be cloned from another berry somewhere that's more sharp.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
You could do that too, and it wouldn't be as distracting. I mean, obviously you can't do them all,
Mhm.
but for instance, the big yellow one that's closer to the right,
Mhm.
that's down a little bit, I would definitely look for another berry and just clone it onto that one, because that one is, I think, is the most distracting.
The same thing
Yeah.
can be done for the tentacle.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Yeah, the two tentacles
It's-
that are going out to the left, the very bottom one, and then the third one up, I guess it is, or the second one up, those could definitely be cloned from the sharper tentacles. So
Mhm.
there's some things that can be done to this, and wouldn't be so difficult, I don't think, to do it.
So, point of discussion, something that I struggle with, and that is where to focus on macros. Now, on a regular photograph, they say you focus, maybe 1/3 into, if you're doing, let's say, a landscape, you don't want to focus on the closest thing that you're interested in having focus, right? You focus maybe 1/3 into the scene. I don't. I haven't found the magic formula yet for
Focus stacking.
that's
Yeah.
the magic
Yeah,
formula.
there
That's your
isn't,
magic
Awesome.
formula.
when you're doing a macro, there isn't a magic formula.
Yeah, I
What
guess.
you have to do is take a couple of minutes and look at the subject and figure out what plane or planes the plant or flower flower falls into. And
Mhm.
there are some flowers that there are so many different planes on so many different levels that the only way you're going to get to everything in focus is to focus stack it.
The
Yep.
other thing too is, another possibility would be to make sure that your subject is far enough away from the background, and using a longer, focal distance lens.
Yeah.
You could use a higher, aperture, a smaller aperture to get more sharpness in, but you have to make sure that that background stays blurred out. So the magic there is make sure your subject is far away from the background, and you can get away with a smaller aperture for a little more sharpness.
Yeah, and something like this, depending on how far away that background is, to your point, if you were doing that, you might be able to get away with just one high aperture one to get most, if not all, the berries in focus, and then one wide open to just blur out that background as much
Yep.
as possible and just kind of
Blend
paint it
them.
in. There's so much contrast that, there's not, it might be easy to do that.
Yeah.
Is it just the subject, the camera background distance, or is it the camera subject distance? I mean, I think that's equally.
Yeah,
It's
it's
the
both,
subject, yeah.
Yeah.
The subject has to be far from the back. That goes with macro, with wildlife, with anything.
Right.
Your subject has to be far enough away from that background so it blurs out, and
But also from the camera.
it blurs, well, yes.
because if both things, yeah, because to
We're
Lenny's
talking
point,
about
if
in
both things are
camera,
far from the
yes.
camera, relatively speaking,
Right.
then you're still not going to blur out the background as much as you want to. So it's like a dance, you gotta,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, definitely, this is an in-camera thing to do. But I love to shoot close up and macro with a big zoom, because if you have a good enough focusing distance, some of the newer lenses, longer focal length lenses, the focusing distance is remarkably close.
Mm,
So you can do some really magical stuff with those, and also the big lenses, if you have light in the, but you can get really nice bokeh
yeah.
from them
I use
too.
my
Not
one.
not in this case, but but that's always another solution, is try a different lens.
Yeah, I use my 100 to 400 for a lot of these kind of shots, and
Yeah,
it's
that's
far from
nice.
being a true macro in any sense, but it can
Crop in.
produce some
It
pretty
doesn't
nice
have to be
results.
macro, it's a
Yeah,
close up.
Doesn't.
because this isn't really a macro shot, obviously.
Right.
Yeah.
Hmm.
All right, so that's all I have on my end, so I can
Okay.
stop sharing and let you.
Okay, let me.
I'm just gonna let you know ahead of time. I have kind of a hard stop around 9, so I may have to drop off depending on how long it takes us to get through them.
Okay. Can everybody see these?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Now this one is another example of where your background is extremely busy and there are a number of hot spots that are distracting from the flowers. And similar situation to what we were talking about before. The maker needs to deal with the background, darken it, blur it some more in order to highlight the flowers.
And the flowers are a little bit blown out. The whites are blown.
Yeah, and that could could be just a simple adjustment. I'm still seeing detail
Mm-hmm.
in the whites. So that may just be a matter of adjusting your slider with your whites and your highlights to tone down the whites a little bit and bring some more detail back into them. Anybody else?
Yeah, I agree with all that. I mean, on a good note, I think composition's nice. It's cropped really well. You could even consider trying to rotate it a little bit to try to, they're sort of on an angle, but a little bit more angle might give it even more dynamic. But definitely that bent piece of stem or grass, whatever it is, I guess, in the foreground that's really bright is
Yes, the
Yeah.
bottom,
probably the most,
the big one on the bottom left, yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
that's the
Very
most distracting for
distracting.
me. I don't mind a bit of brightness on some of these kind of shots because it makes me think of a sunny spring day. You know, I mean, I've had shots of my own where judge is like, "Oh, keep tone, tone it down even more, tone it down," and like, I don't know, it gives kind of a mood. But I definitely think in this particular photo, it's a little bit too much
Mhm.
because it's not creating enough separation between the flowers and the background.
Yeah, that's a perfect example of having your subject further away from your background.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Even though it's
which
bright, it would be a lot more blurred if you were further away, although it is blurred to an extent. But I think what Ellen said before is to take an eyedropper, click on one of the darker greens and lower your opacity and just brush some of that color into the very, very bright spots.
also, like is always said with a lot of the landscapes that we see in competitions, light, light, light. Like chances are it doesn't look like this is a very overcast day, although there's not really shadows on the flower itself, but with all the specular highlights, looks like maybe it wasn't overcast. It's hard to tell, but yeah, with flowers, overcast is your friend. Just try to
Oh,
wait
yeah.
for an overcast day to even bother shooting pictures like this because that'll
Yep.
help you a lot.
Yeah.
It's like if I'm shooting waterfalls, if it's bright out, I don't even go out. There's no point because I know that I'm pretty much not gonna
Yeah.
get what I want.
Mhm. The first thing that came to mind is it's a question. If one were to crop this maybe more squarish to eliminate that bright read at the bottom, would it detract from the photo?
Not if,
And
not if,
the question is, does it need so much stem? And I don't know.
that's an idea. I think if you rotated it a little bit, like Ryan said, I think it would add some interest to it. And then possibly it would look better with the bottom cropped off and that big bright spot would be gone, but then
Yeah,
you'd
bottom
still
left.
have to deal with the bright spot on the left under the flower, the really bright and another thing too, also, there, I think that there wouldn't be a big problem, doing a subject detection on this. The only way to know is to try it
Yeah.
and see if it actually picks up, but I think the petals might get detected automatically, who knows, but
Oh, they would.
it's
There's
worth
enough
a shot,
contrast
yeah.
there.
Yeah,
I think
there's
it would work.
so yeah, but
Um,
first you would have to paint your colors in anyway, and then work on darkening the background a bit.
Yeah, you just have to be really, really careful with the subject detection because it doesn't do it smoothly. It's very
Yeah,
abrupt.
you can erase though and add. You can add
Yeah.
to the
Yeah.
mask and take away from the mask. So I don't think that most of the time, sometimes it nails it and sometimes it doesn't, and then you just have to tweak it a little bit.
Yeah, I agree.
And also that dark spot
Lower left.
on the flower
right.
itself above the lower flower above the middle, right straight
Yeah.
up. That's
Yeah.
very distracting. That could be easily cloned out.
Yep.
Yep.
Again, I would just do content aware fill.
Yeah, that too. Hmm.
Okay. Shall we go on to the next one?
Yep.
Is there any way you can make these full screen? You hit
Uh,
F11. Oh, this is a Mac. Never mind.
no. No, I've got them running in Adobe Bridge.
Okay. I know where this is.
Well, I like the black and white treatment on this.
Yeah.
But it's and I love the composition. I really like the way the bridge is broken up, and it's really very interesting. But you need to set your black point and your white point on this and add some contrast to it so that the colors, so that there's more pop in the image. Right now it's mostly gray tones, and it's screaming for some white and very, bright and dark tones to make it pop. But I do like the composition a lot. And maybe, excuse me, maybe I would take just a little bit off the top and a little bit off the bottom. That one part of the reflection, I don't know that you need that, but that's my personal preference. But it definitely needs a pop of contrast. And
Yeah.
the way to, yeah, go ahead.
You need to set your black point
And the
and you
white
need
point.
to set your white point on this.
So
I'm gonna make another comment. With this one, I would not recommend putting this into our next competition. And this is a really good example
Right.
of there's water down there. It's a great reflection, but a judge looking at this, are they going, and this is a question that you have to ask yourself, is the judge going to say that the bridge is your subject, or is the judge going to say that the reflection of the bridge in the water is your subject?
Oh, I definitely think the bridge is the subject.
yeah, I agree.
So do I. And that's why I'm bringing this up.
Yeah, there's water in the image, but it's not an image of water. It's an image of a bridge.
I just want everybody to be thinking about that when you're putting, when you're deciding what images to enter in our next competition. Because Roman is the judge on this,
Oh,
and I'm sure.
Boy. Be careful. No, Ellen is right. I mean, I would look into doing something like a strong reflection in water and nothing else, just a reflection, so that something like that, like maybe an ocean shot or something where the ocean is the main subject. It's okay to include the beach and the sky, but the water's got to be the main subject. And you can do snow and you can do ice, because those are forms of, you said any form of water, right?
Yeah, and you could
Okay.
do water drops.
Exactly.
You could take and make a chunk of ice in your freezer and do a macro of that chunk of ice.
Yeah.
And that would be applicable.
So Ellen, let me ask you this. What if you decided to freeze a flower in ice and it was very muted in the background? How would that go over, do you think?
Boy,
Because
that would depend on how you handled it.
exactly, it has to be handled properly.
Yeah.
But to add some interest to that block of ice, or maybe even drop some food coloring or something into that ice to make it more interesting.
That would be interesting.
And also, I've seen people photographing ice cubes in a glass of Coca-Cola. And it's actually pretty cool. So there are some ideas out there. So if you have a bunch of ice cubes in a glass of Coke, you're
As
still
long as you're focused in on the
on the
ice
ice
cube.
cubes, correct. But it's the ice cubes that reflect the stuff from the Coke. So it has to, so you have to be careful with that. You can't just photograph a glass with Coca-Cola and ice in it. You have
Well,
to
technically,
focus on,
Coke is water, right? So, I mean, the Coke
so it has
itself,
to
I
be
don't
the
think.
ice. Yep.
Well, no,
Yeah.
I'm saying like it doesn't really have to just be the ice because the
Oh,
Coke
oh,
is just
true.
colored water in a
Coca-Cola,
sense.
Coca-Cola's water. What am I
Yeah.
talking about?
Yeah, so I wouldn't necessarily, I don't think that would pull away from the subject.
No, it wouldn't. It's part
No.
of the subject. You're
Good.
right.
The
Duh.
one thing I'll say going back to this particular image, if I had to guess, this has a black point because if you look, there are some really, really dark. They're
Yeah.
small, but there
There's-
are some really dark points. So this is I think black and white is where white point and dark point only get you so far. I think you often have to add extra contrast than what
Mhm.
you would achieve just by hitting the white and black point with black and whites, because there's so much area in this that's kind of mid-tone. So you kind of have to exaggerate the contrast because you don't have the luxury of colors to create color contrast. So that's my only thing. Just making a black and white point in this, it probably already has one if I had to guess. It's just not enough overall contrast.
Yeah.
I
The
agree
oth-
with you.
Right, absolutely. The other thing is that you should always look at your images, and if they're too monotone or there's not enough contrast in the original photo, it probably won't be a good black and white photo. So you have to look at your image and say, does it look better in color or does it look better in black and white? But I think this one looked good if you added a little bit
Yeah.
of contrast to it.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
I don't think this image would work in color.
No, but it needs more contrast.
Yeah.
And definitely a little bit more white. There is dark in it, as you can see in a shot, and the reflections in the water, and under the bridge, there's dark.
Yeah.
Okay. Next one.
Okay. Well, the first two things,
Mm.
very, very blatant. The pieces of whatever on the right and the left,
Absolutely.
content aware fill. Bye-bye.
Yep.
And definitely the brightness all around the spider needs to be toned down.
And it has
Unfortunately, the spider's in that shadow.
yeah. And
Yeah.
then there's the blue, the blue color cast.
Yeah. Although I wonder if the spider has a bluish. It could be sort of because the leaf itself doesn't really look like it has a cast to it. Maybe a little bit. But I'm just
Yeah.
wondering if that's how that spider is, if it sort of iridesces a bluish color or not. But you could be right.
Oh, the eyes are nice and sharp. I love that. Mm.
It looks like to
Yeah.
me there might have been a clone of something on the right. But whatever it is, there's sort of a blotchy thing. I would try to use content aware fill. Sometimes content aware fill does a better job than cloning does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
Very true. And the one thing that kind of bothers me is that the face of the spider and the legs surrounding the face are really, really sharp. And it just seems to drop off a lot when you get to the sharpness drops off a lot when you get to the body of the spider and the other legs.
Also, that's because you're shooting down. This is being
Yeah.
shot down. Despite it's not
It's a strange
level.
angle.
Yep.
Yeah. See, I don't have a huge problem when the body falls off because obviously the eyes are the most important thing, and it's sort of really highlights them. To me, I don't know if any of it's sharp. It could just be a cropping thing. It could just be that there's low resolution. Maybe it's been cropped a lot, but I'm not really seeing. I mean, the eyes definitely look sharper than the rest, but I still don't know if they have the critical sharpness that you really need for this kind of picture. But it could just be, on my end, Ellen, on your end, since you're seeing it native, it could look sharper than it does, transmitted through Zoom.
With my eyes, with the contacts right now, nothing looks sharp.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So
I think it's important that it looks sharp on Zoom, because isn't that how, let's say, Roman, I'm not saying he's going to be judging this particular one, but when he's judging, he's going to be looking at it on Zoom.
Bless you.
And so
Yeah.
it has to be sharp on Zoom.
Definitely.
Definitely.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, for wildlife, and especially close-up wildlife like this, I have a pretty high standard for like critical sharpness, especially on the eyes. Unfortunately, when we put it in PCP and reduce the resolution down to 1050, it's almost hard for any shot to have the critical sharpness that I look for. But I don't know, this one looks a little bit soft to me.
But everyone is at an equal disadvantage, so
Yeah, that's true.
so
You think-
everything gets normalized down to 10.
You would think.
So that's fine.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So it's all relative.
When is this competition, Ellen?
wait. um,
I think it's the 15th.
Oh, God, and then he's judging Camnats on the 18th.
good.
Oh, boy.
No. Is it the okay?
22nd?
We gotta have
Yeah,
the
it's the
photos in by the
22nd.
17th.
Oh, it's the 22nd, okay, so.
Yeah, because the 15th is Martin Luther King Day.
Right.
Right.
And I purposely didn't want to put a meeting because some people are involved in
Right.
various things. Okay, let's go on to the next image.
I don't know if it's my eyes, but I think this image is really nicely composed. I love the sharp angles, but it looks a little noisy to me. I don't know if it's my eyes or I should put my glasses on. I don't know. It could use a little bit of noise reduction. But I really like it. I think the composition is nice. The only thing that's actually bothering me is the cloud that's coming off the edge of the edge.
I agree.
It's in a really bad spot. And being those are only those few little poofy clouds, I would just content aware film or clone them out, because I think they're very distracting. If you had more clouds, you can always do sky replacement, but it would be more attractive than just having those few little clouds there.
Yeah, I think I agree with you, Natalie. I think what those little clouds do is take away from the geometrical nature of everything else. And that's what I really like about the image, how the maker played around with the geometry to bring in so many triangles.
Yeah, it's beautifully done.
Even with the building on the left-hand side that you can only see a portion of, it's another triangle.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that makes the image so interesting and really works.
Yeah.
And those silly little clouds just take away from the power of the rest of the image.
I think that's all you need. The maker needs to do is get rid of those clouds.
Yeah, and I would be curious. It's not really necessary, but I would be curious how it would look if it was cropped even just a little bit tighter from the right. So down and in from the right.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Super minor, but I just wonder because, obviously the sky isn't doing anything. The sky is there. You can't eliminate it altogether, but with no clouds or, in this case, just this one little extraneous cloud that we don't need, you want to eliminate the sky as much as humanly possible. So I wonder if we pulled it in just a little bit more, if it might even look better, but super minor.
So
it's a
would it,
beautiful image.
would it
Mhm.
make a difference if that cloud wasn't really a cloud, but a something from the building?
I was thinking that might be something from the building, but
Yeah, but
regardless, it's
it's still
distracting.
distracting.
Right.
It's still
So,
distracting.
yeah,
Yeah.
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 that's a good point because regardless of what it is, it appears like a cloud and it's going to be interpreted as a cloud.
Yeah.
It just takes your eye away from all the beautiful triangles and all the
Uh,
lines in the image.
Mhm.
It just
I-
doesn't fit, and it's such an easy fix.
I have a
Yeah.
couple comments.
Mhm.
The,
Okay.
as far as going in from the right, I would think that the artist decided to use the corners. You can see where the angles come in from the corner. And if you
Mhm.
come in from the right, you're going to lose that aspect of the composition. And the second comment, I already forgot. How do you like that? Oh my God, I am really like gone. I can't believe it. Oh, I know what it was. Would this be eligible for like the abstract competition?
Yes.
I
Okay.
think so. Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah, it would work for an abstract competition. It would work for architecture,
Mhm.
and it would work if did a competition on geometry.
And I think the the light looks like it's probably a little bit more middle of the day, which actually I think is in the favor here because it adds
Yeah.
a little more
Pop.
contrast to the
Yep.
different, you
Mhm.
got one piece that's bright, you got one piece that's dark, so it accentuates the different triangles.
Yeah, I don't think the time of day hurts this image at all.
Yeah.
Not at all.
That's a beautiful image.
Yeah.
I see the point about moving, getting rid of some of the sky, and I think if one were to move in from the right, then one would have to move up from the bottom because I think the maker wants to have that triangle coming out of the corner.
Yeah, I
I think
think
that's one of
Yeah.
the maker's hallmark.
no, I could definitely see that. I think, and I was just saying just a little bit, not much, super minor, but because like if you look at the triangle at the top left, I don't think they quite hit the point. And I think you have a little bit of wiggle room on the right where if you pulled it in even more, you would still be coming out of the corner. So just a tiny bit, again, super minor, but I think there's a little bit of leeway just to pull it in just a little bit more and still get that effect that you guys are talking about. Because I agree
Yeah.
with that 100%.
I think that's up to the artist, though,
Yeah.
the maker's choice, but it's a gorgeous image. Just get rid of that white, whatever it is, whether it be steam or clouds. That's the only thing that's wrong with this image, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I don't know, might
I
look a
agree.
bit noisy to me, but that could be me. Just a little bit, maybe a little bit of noise reduction in the sky, but that's it. This beautiful image.
I think maybe they can clone out the bird poop up there.
Where?
And I'm just kidding.
I'm saying, where's the bird poop? Well,
Okay.
if you can see that, boy, I give you credit.
I was just joined by my dog Molly, who wants to critique some of these photos as well.
Okay, let's go on to the next one.
Okay, well, a very distracting background.
Yeah.
The bird looks pretty sharp, the eye. However, those blades of grass that are out of focus against the black of the bird they have to be taken out, content aware. Phil, clone them out. However, And the other thing that bothers me is where are the feet? Where are the bird's legs? Because in an image like this, you should be able to see or at least have an idea of where the legs are, even though the maker was low to the ground. I would have backed up a little bit so that there'd be room for the feet to be there. You know what I'm trying to say? I don't know.
Well, you need to leave enough room
Right.
where
You can
where
imagine
you
that
can imagine the feet would be.
right, right. But
Yeah, because they're probably hidden, but he's probably crouching enough where they might not even
yeah,
be
but
visible no matter what angle you're at. But I
right,
know
but
what
if
I
you
mean.
backed up, if the maker backed up a little bit, it would look, I think, a little better. It wouldn't look like the bird's cut off.
The other thing that's really bothering me is in the bottom middle, those little pink flowers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
My eye keeps getting pulled to those little pink flowers, even with the bright orange epaulets. I still keep looking at those little pink flowers.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm actually more distracted by the foreground than I am the background. The background doesn't
Yeah.
bother me too much. I think it's blurred enough, and I think it's a nice, warm, neutral tone with the tan. Nothing's really blown out. I mean, you could definitely probably, take a brush, tone it down a little bit. But again, you don't want to make things look like, this somewhat bright bird in a field of darkness, so you got to be careful about toning down the background so much to the point where it doesn't look like a natural environment. But yeah, the foreground for me is definitely
Yeah, the grass
main.
against the bird's body is
Yeah.
really,
Yeah,
and
that
also
is
the dark blades of grass or whatever that is in the background,
yeah,
they need to be dealt with.
I'd rather have it all tan than
Yes,
have the
yes,
random
yes,
strips of dark.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And one of the things when you're dealing with a dark animal or bird, you don't want to darken your background
No,
too much because that's going to take away from the contrast with the bird. And as an optical illusion, it's going to take away somewhat of the sharpness of the bird, no
Mhm.
matter how sharp the dark bird is.
Yeah,
yes,
no, that's a good
that's
point.
true.
And
Yes,
we
when
always
you,
say your eyes goes to the brightest part. Well, if you have a dark bird, then the
Yeah.
background is probably going to be brighter than the bird. I
yes,
mean, that's
yes,
just normal.
absolutely. You have to have a brighter background on a
Yeah.
dark bird. And the one other thing that's really distracting is there seems to be an out of focus blade of something on the left wing
Yeah,
underneath the epaulet.
Yeah.
That's like an out of focus blade of grass or one of those tan blades of grass, it looks like. And it's like a blob that's sitting there.
yeah, I see what you're
So
talking about.
Yeah.
that you can probably paint that out though if you do, or you can clone one of the sharper, maybe right above there and try and paint that in somehow.
Can
But
you
that
point,
could be dealt with.
can you point to that? I guess I wasn't seeing that.
Okay,
Yeah,
on the left side of the bird, the left wing, you see that lighter area that looks funky? Yeah, a little
unless it's
more.
brown.
Yeah, it looks brown. That is an out of focus something.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, down more, Ellen, on the bird, on the
The
wing.
underneath of the
Right,
actual
underneath
body
the
or wing.
Where? Where?
Okay, you see
Just to
the left wing, right under the epaulet, down to the
Ac-
ground. That's
actually the bird's right wing,
I'm
our
so
left.
yes, yes, our left.
Oh,
Our left. No, it's the bird's right, but it's our left.
Okay.
You were on the right side, Ellen. You just
okay.
lower.
Basically, if you took that circle she made and just rotated it 90 degrees.
I see
Yeah.
it now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
You see it though? It looks
Yeah.
brown.
I see it now.
It's
Yeah.
on the wing, the whole wing from the epaulet down to the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can see that there's an out of focus something in there.
And that's
Mhm.
really easy for that to happen, and you can miss it super easy, but even when
It-
you're looking through your viewfinder, you
Yes.
don't notice it until you get on your computer. You're like,
Yeah,
oh,
it's not hard to fix.
sometimes
I
it goes
have, I
across
have
the
a
face.
question. The wing, that one orange, it's not, like there's some loss of detail on the feathers? Even in the black above the epaulette or whatever you want to call those, orangey things.
Yeah,
I'm kind
yeah,
of
there
seeing
is
that too.
Yeah.
that could be, you can paint a little bit of texture maybe in there. And you can't go too far with it, but if you try to paint a little bit of texture and a tiny, tiny bit of clarity in there, you
Mhm.
might get some detail out of it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest again, the whole thing there, none of it looks crazy sharp to me, but I'm sort of seeing it like come and go. So again, I don't know if on my end if it's the transmission. I don't know how it looks on your end, Ellen, but and to Lenny's point, the judge is going to see it that way too, but the person who's presenting this, they can only see it
On their
real time on their
computer.
computer. So if it looks sharp, they assume it's sharp. I'm just saying on my end, it doesn't look very sharp. I don't know if that's how it really is or if it's because of Zoom, but
Yeah, on my end, it looks pretty sharp.
Yeah,
Okay.
it looks sharp except for what Charlene mentioned. There's loss of detail in the epaulettes. And
Mhm.
I don't think that taking the saturation down is going to fix that. I think you
And-
need to paint a little bit of like I said, a little bit of clarity, a little bit of texture in there. You can do that in Lightroom, or if you don't use Photoshop, you could easily do that in Lightroom and see how it looks.
and
But I've
also-
done that. I've done that, and if you do it, if it can work, it can work.
Also, like maybe just to kind of highlight the eye a little bit more to get a
Yeah.
little more catch light
Yeah.
into the
Yeah,
eye.
that's
Yeah,
easy
that's
to
a good
do.
point.
Definitely.
Yeah,
Yeah,
good
I
point.
think the image needs a lot more work before we worry about the catch light.
Yeah,
But
but there's it does have most of it is post-processing things.
yeah.
The image
Yeah.
itself.
Well,
is
the
pretty-
shooting, the what I say about the backing up a little, leaving
Yeah.
room for the feet, that's shooting. You would have to back
Yeah.
up a little bit there.
Yeah, but isn't this just maybe cropped? Maybe they were back.
No, I don't think so.
They were that close to the bird, huh?
We're close to that, and the maker's low on the ground.
Well,
Yeah,
where
I
are they
think
gonna
it's
back
I don't
off
think
to?
it's the closeness. I think it's the height. Yeah, like we
Yes,
always
that
want to
too.
get low. We want to get low to be at its level, but sometimes you get too low and you cut off
Uh-huh.
certain parts of the body. So it's
Yeah,
again, it's a little bit of a dance to make sure you're not
yeah,
getting at an angle that's gonna
yeah. It's a fine line there.
yeah.
Okay.
I'm
Yeah.
appreciative whenever I learn a new word and I learn the word epaulette. And
Epaulettes, yes.
yeah. So
That's
thank
what-
you.
Epaulettes. It's spelled really weird too.
Yeah, I know. I had to look it up. So thank you.
Okay, yeah, it's
An
spelled
ornamental
weird.
shoulder piece.
Yep.
That's what they're called, epaulettes.
Yep. Thank you.
Isn't that also the term for like if somebody was wearing armor?
Yeah, those
Yes.
Well,
those
it's a
things on their
naval.
shoulders.
On a
Yeah.
military uniform.
I'm
Yeah,
like
it's a
clothing.
naval
Shoulders,
term.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Coat or jacket. Yeah, military uniform. So,
Mhm.
but yeah, I didn't know it was called that on a red winged blackbird. So thank you.
All right, let's see what we got
Okay.
next.
Okay.
All right, who's gonna say it first?
Mhm.
Mm.
We lost a wing there.
Yep,
Yeah.
we're missing wingtips. It would have been a pretty nice image if the wingtips were there. And
Nice.
a lot of people make that mistake.
So
It's
if it's
losing a
cropped in
little
a bit,
bit of detail in the body
Yeah.
also.
Yeah, but the biggest thing is
The eye looks great.
yeah, and then there's the bright spots and the dark spot on the light green, which can be dealt with easily. However, the
Yeah.
wings, the wingtips,
The wingtip.
lack of wingtips ruins the image.
So
Yeah.
if
And
if this were cropped in tightly, just above I guess the right wing, or the one on the left anyway, would it appear to be a deliberate crop, and would it be okay then?
I think it would be better. I
It
think,
would be
you know,
better, but it wouldn't be ideal.
Yeah,
You want to see
And-
that wing.
and I wouldn't recommend putting something with a partial wing into competition.
No,
Hmm, okay.
especially if Roman's judging.
I also think I would have left. I mean, I imagine this must have been cropped. I'm sure they didn't crop into the wing. I'm sure if they had the whole wing, they'd be delighted and have kept it, but I'm sure it was cropped, at least in the other directions. And to me, the fish is a little too close to the bottom. I would leave a little more room. I'd maybe even leave a tiny bit more room behind. I mean, you do always want to have probably more room in the front so it has
Exactly.
something to fly into, but it's probably a little tighter than I would like on the bottom
Mhm.
and the right.
Yep. Yep. And I need to smooth that background out a little bit.
Yeah, definitely.
But the wingtips, just, to me,
Yeah, it's
that's a
tough.
no-go.
Yeah. It's a shame because you get excited because
Yeah.
you caught a really good
Yeah,
moment, pretty sharp, all that, but that lack of a wing, it's very distracting. And
Yes.
yeah. And
Mhm.
it's frustrating when you start looking at your pictures and find a really sharp, great image, and then you'd see that a wing or a tail is cut off.
Yep.
So
That's
one
why
thing,
it's always good to mash your shutter when you get
Mhm.
something like that.
I guess one thing is, if there are other images with the completed wing, you could sort of
You could,
put them
You
together and
could.
you could.
expand the canvas. That's
Yes,
maybe
you
one way of
could.
doing
You
it, because it
actually,
is a nice shot.
you could.
it's a
Yeah.
But
nice
if
moment.
you have to make sure the image is worth the work.
Right,
Yeah.
right, right.
Yeah.
Agree.
Okay. Next.
Ooh, kingfish.
oh, that one piece of white.
The eye is beautiful, sharp.
Yeah.
Okay. This is my image. I've been trying to get a decent picture of one of
Find a
these
club.
one of these guys probably for the last, I don't know, 10 years.
That's a kingfisher, right?
They
Yep.
are notoriously,
It's a male.
they fly away the minute you
Yep.
raise your camera or your binoculars or whatever you have. They're gone. They're very hard
Yep.
to photograph.
And so I got this picture. Of course, if you look at the background, there was an unbelievable thicket there.
Mm,
Yeah, but it's toned down really well.
yeah.
Well, that's what I tried to do, to get it toned down so that the bird and the branch that the bird was on stood out. What
Yeah.
I'm seeing right now is the whites on the bird need to
Yeah, I was
come
I
gonna
don't
down.
think I
comment on
think they
that.
could be dealt with though, Ellen.
Yeah,
I
they
think
can.
you can bring the detail back. It's mostly on the right side of the neck, and then the top part, the white part on the chest
Yeah.
that's lacking detail, but I think you can bring that back.
I agree.
Yeah, I think, and I would just try and get rid of some of those darker spots or in the background. Just I mean, it's doable.
Oh yeah. This this background has a tremendous amount of work on it
Oh yeah, I
so
can
far.
see you put a lot of work into it. That's very obvious. Because the thicket would never look that good.
Yeah.
But
A-
I
and
think
this
the dark spots need to be toned down, or at least make it a little more on the level of the other. Because the lighter thicket doesn't look bad at all. It really doesn't.
And
Run
this
by-
guy sat for longer than I've ever seen one sit.
Oh, he must be full. He looks like he might be a little bit, maybe he ate too much.
Ellen, do you think this would benefit from having the perch toned down just a little bit?
Yes.
more?
Yes, yes. What do you think about taking the left side of the perch where it's past the part of the perch that goes up? What do you
Yeah.
think about pulling that crop in just a little bit more?
I
Or
think
will you lose detail on the bird?
no.
Okay. Yeah,
No, I'm not gonna, I won't lose detail on the bird.
yeah, I would take a little bit of that off. Actually, to me, I would rather leave that and take the part of the perch out that's going up. That I think, you know what I'm saying? I think it would look, I think somehow that perch going up, the twigs that are going up are competing with the bird.
Okay.
So I would take those out and just leave the rest of the branch in, or maybe crop it just a bit from the left. But other than that, I think you did a wonderful job on the background, dealing with that background. Yeah. Yeah, so good job. I would just do those couple of things and one more thing, the dark branch, I wish you could see my mouse. The dark branch, the dark thicket right behind the beak.
Yeah, that's
I
gotta
would
go.
definitely lighten that.
Yeah.
But it looks great. You're very fortunate to get a shot like that.
Mhm.
I've probably got 25
Uh-huh.
before he decided to fly off.
You're lucky.
Yeah. And I've been chasing them for probably 10 years,
Yeah,
trying to get a decent picture, and almost every picture was just blurred.
Mm-hmm. Yep. They don't stick around too long.
No, they don't.
Is the white to the left of his eye, is that part of?
Yes,
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
I don't-
that's
it-
there.
that should be there.
Yeah.
It looked like a snowflake to me.
No,
No, they're there.
no, that's on them.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think you did a really nice job of dealing with that noisy background. Just
Okay.
needs a couple more twigs.
Did you-
Twigs, tweaks.
Did you darken
Okay.
the background a bit?
I blurred the background, and then I used a frequency separation,
Um,
which enabled me to mute the various colors that was in that thicket.
mm. I'm asking because at the top of the head, it looks like just there's a V shape,
It's fuzz.
So I'm looking at the top of the head above that I guess the white feather,
Mhm.
and it looks a little bit brighter. So I'm just wondering if you did darken the background, maybe is that a white feather, or is that part of the background that hasn't been darkened? I don't know how to point. Oh, maybe I can. I really like the sharpness. It's a beautiful image.
I see what you're referring to. It's super minor, but I think I see what you're referring to.
I don't know how to.
Yeah.
It's like
Oh.
directly straight above where that white snowflake, as I'll call it, is.
Yep.
If you just follow that,
Yeah.
right in
Yeah.
there.
I found, yeah, there.
Right in there. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That is
it's a
part
little-
of the bird's
Oh, okay, all right,
plumage.
okay. Now I just have to figure out how to take back my, okay, there we go.
Yeah. Yeah, I do think though that the branch, part of the branch that's going up is competing
Yeah.
with the bird. But I think
Okay.
so far it's great job.
I was just happy to get them.
Yeah, I bet. They're not easy.
Okay, let me go on to the next.
Oh,
Okay, Lenny, what is this?
That is the edge, an edgy band or edgy bandit.
what?
Um, it's, so the High Line rather, they do have art installations from time to time. And I was walking down the High Line and I saw this scene and I was trying to capture it. My wife and I had just been to the edge for the first time up on the edge and looking out, and it's a wonderful experience. And
So
looking back at the edge, and there's a band of these. I guess this is I don't even know what kind of fish it is. Maybe it's a trout. A whole bunch of them. So I just
it looks
wanted
like a
to
catfish.
whatever it is, I wanted to do, get a juxtaposition of the fish and the edge. The edge is definitely out of focus. It was a little bit too bright, and I brought the brightness down. But I just wanted to get some feedback on whether or not it works. Um,
Oh.
no, I'm not even sure what category it would be in, but it
Crazy?
yeah, crazy. Whimsical category.
Yes.
Anyway, I thought
Um,
entertaining.
Hey guys,
okay.
I have to
Now,
drop, but
all
I
right,
just want to say I like the look of it. I like the composition a lot. I do agree with the little bit of a bright area, but I
I
like the
think
shine
the
as
edge
well.
needs the brightness on the building has to come down a little bit. The
And I brought
reflect-
it down
Yeah.
a lot, actually.
Yeah, it's still bright.
Mhm.
And my other comment is it's cut too close to the bottom
yeah.
of the fish on the left.
Mm,
And my other one last comment is on the left, the very left bottom.
yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of distracting.
Yeah, I left that in so that you could say that.
Um,
I
It's
knew
different.
that. I
It's
knew that.
different.
Yeah.
okay. The first thing that I thought of when I looked at this was, ooh, Lenny's playing around with AI.
Oh, no, not really.
And that was my first thought.
I could see why you thought that.
Mhm.
And that's one of the things that we have to be careful of. Now, this is a great example of a photograph that the maker took in its entirety, but with the advent of AI, it could be mistaken for something that was done with AI.
That's true.
But with a couple of fixes, Lenny, I think you should enter this in the next pictorial.
So my
Can I make
main,
one more suggestion?
Mhm.
How would it look if you see the fish on the right?
Mhm.
How would it, I think it might look better if you cloned out that top piece of that dark pole. Just left the
yeah,
bottom.
thought about that. Yeah. And that's easy enough to do.
Yeah, it's very easy to do. I
Yeah.
think the black pole is distracting, but it has to be there at least on the bottom, but I don't think it needs to be there on the top.
Right.
Awfully cool.
Yeah,
But
that's a great idea. It was a last minute decision to put this in. My major concern was representing the artwork of others. Two things: representing the artwork of others, but I think the juxtaposition with another iconic structure, the edge, sort of
Yes.
maybe make it work. And the fact that it's a trio, right? The two fishes and then the building. I'm seriously thinking about putting in substituting the building for something sharper and a little bit darker because it really is that
did you
bottom.
try selectively sharpening the building?
I have not, but it's pretty blurry if you zoom in. It's
But it's
I
so
think
unique.
that's okay.
I think it's fine, but I would the black
Okay.
pole on top, and then once
Yeah.
you do that, I would pull it in on the right just a little bit.
Mhm, mhm.
and
Yeah.
clone out whatever that white is, that building that's on the very bottom. On
On
the
bottom
left.
left, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also, I think when you think about someone else's artwork, you're thinking about just focusing right on that piece of artwork.
Yeah.
You've got a lot of different elements in this image. So you're not just shooting someone else's artwork.
Okay, yeah, that was my main,
Exactly.
one of my concerns,
Yeah.
so, yeah.
What you've done is taken the artwork as it is and put it into your own image. If you had just done one of the fish,
Yeah,
then it wouldn't be your own image. It would just be a snapshot of someone else's artwork.
right.
But because you've taken both of the fish and there and put them in with the buildings, you've made it into your own artwork. So I think it works.
All right, yeah, thanks for
And
that.
it's really cool.
It's very cool. Can you add some canvas on the bottom, or did you crop it that way?
I think, that's all there is. I have to check the original image, but I think that's
You
all.
can
there is.
add a little canvas to that,
A drop, yeah,
It's a little bit challenging with the building.
just a little bit.
just a little bit.
Yeah, it'll work if you only keep it to a minimum. It shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, I have to check that.
Okay.
Just give it a little tiny bit more
Yeah.
space by the tail there.
All right.
Okay,
Cool.
we've got 3 images left.
Okay.
Now, I put this is one of mine, taken at Longwood last week. And this is actually out on their small lake. And the reason I put it in was to make the point for our next competition that this is exactly what you shouldn't be putting into the competition. Because yes, it's on the lake. Yes, you can see there's water there, but the water is not the main subject. And that was the reason that I put it in.
That's a beautiful image.
It is.
Thank you.
I love it.
It was seeing these, it was the coolest thing. These light bulbs are enormous.
That's like Jolly Green Giant.
Yeah,
Christmas
exactly. It was just really, really pretty.
Very
Um,
cool.
But I wanted to make the point that looking at the image, the lights, I think, are the main image, and the reflection of the lights and the water is not the subject, even though they're sitting on the water. And just wanted everybody to be mindful of that.
You can put it in open.
I'm sorry?
You can put it in the open category.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's good.
And in pictorial.
Yeah. And this is just about straight out of the camera.
Mm-hmm.
I did almost no work on that at all.
Nice.
Uh,
Oh, where did that come from?
on the 29th, we're gonna do some stuff with the long exposures and the light painting. And I wanted to give everybody an idea of long exposure. This was taken yesterday in New York, and it was a long exposure. I think it was 2 seconds. Maybe it was either 2 or 5. And in order to get these streaks, we waited for the light down the block to change. And then as the vehicles drove past with the shutter open, we got these wonderful streaks to play against the really pretty scene at the hotel. And it's just an idea of something that you can do with a long exposure. And the last one is something else that you can do with a longer exposure and blur. And this is just a zoom blur of the Rockefeller Center Christmas tree.
Mm.
And personally, I like this better than looking at the tree, but that's something else that you can do, playing around with the lights and long exposures. And you'll get to try some of this at the workshop. And I think that concludes everything.
Yeah. By the way, I just want to add that those awful pictures, the cosmos, the red-winged blackbird, the spider, they were mine. I put them in on purpose just so that I could point out bad things in those images to people.
Well, I think they were really helpful for people to get an idea of what can be wrong with an image and how to fix them.
Yeah.
So I thank you for putting them in.
Oh, and the missing wingtips, because that I thought of that because Tony put in this great image of an eagle, a bald eagle in flight, and he cut the wingtips off, and he made the mistake of asking me on Facebook what I thought of the image.
I saw the comments for that.
Yeah, well, he asked for it, so I'm going to be brutally honest with him. It's a beautiful image, but where are the wingtips? You can't cut off the wingtips. That's
For anybody who doesn't know, Tony is Natalie's husband.
So, Mr. Lenape.
Yes, that's his office.
Yeah, that's his office. But it's a beautiful image, even though the light was bad. But he cut off the wingtips. I'm like, what's wrong with you? It was sharp. It was detailed. I mean, probably one of the better pictures he's ever taken. So I was looking for something where the wingtips were missing. So, and I cropped the hell out of that picture too, just to show that it was cropped too tight. So I did all that on purpose, but
well, thank you for putting them in. They were good
they're going
examples.
right in the trash where they belong.
Good learning examples.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions or want to make any comments?
No, this was very useful. I enjoyed it a lot. I learned a lot.
And we got some new vocabulary, huh?
Yes.
Epaulet.
Yes. And
Yeah, real stupid. But what is pictorial image?
Okay. A pictorial image is any image that doesn't fall into one of the 4 nature categories. So the 4 nature categories are
In Federation.
Yeah, in the Federation, the 4 nature categories are ornithology, which is the birds, zoology, general nature, and botany.
Okay.
Now, within those nature categories, there can't be any hand of man included. So if there's hand of man in a nature picture or anything that doesn't fit into one of those nature categories goes into pictorial.
So for example, a bird sitting on a fence,
Right?
that would
That
go in
would go
pictorial.
in, but also portraits would go in, street photography, architecture, anything that doesn't fit into nature would go into pictorial. And in pictorial, there's the general pictorial, and then there's creative.
Okay.
And creative is for any image that you can see there was a lot of processing done to it.
Okay. All right. I
But
see right
in
through it.
the,
I wasn't quite sure I understood what it was.
the fine line there is that if it's done in camera, it goes in pictorial. If it's done in Photoshop or on a computer or any, then it goes into creative.
Okay.
Has to
Well,
be post-processed.
How do you
well,
know?
Lightroom fits in where? That's not the same as Photoshop. Sort of.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
Yeah, processing can be in Lightroom, it can be in Photoshop,
Anywhere.
it can be in Luminar, it can be in Affinity, and I can keep going with different programs.
Okay, all right.
So
that-
a good example would be, just for the hell of it, if you took a picture of the ocean and you were using Lightroom and you decided to change the color of the blue in the ocean to red, that's
Okay.
that would be a creative image. So it doesn't matter because you did it on a computer. It wasn't done in the camera.
But if you just,
Well,
if you just did like exposure and contrast and such like that,
No,
Lightroom, that's considered.
that goes in general.
in general pictorial, yes.
Okay,
So if you're doing focus stacking in the camera versus on the computer, there's no way to tell.
No, there isn't.
Exactly.
And so, you know, it has to, the picture itself has to stand on its own. So
But if
I
you're
don't know.
if you're stacking something, you're not gonna, there's no way to tell. If you're stacking a
Yeah.
flower, you can put that into botany for, I mean, you really can. You know, it's up to you. But if I know that there'd be judges, if you were to put, for instance, a focus stack image into botany, I mean, into pictorial, they'll turn around and disqualify it because they're
Oh.
saying this is nature.
Yeah.
And it happens all the time, so.
Well, and what's happened to me a couple of times is I've put things into creative that I have done a lot of work with, and they can't tell that there's any work done, and they toss it out of
Yep,
creative.
same thing with my spider web. I did all this work in the original Topaz filters on a spider web. It had dew on it, but I really exaggerated the drops and I made them have little stars coming off of them, and they DQ'd it. They said this is nature.
But the,
Yeah.
so the manipulation has to be
The
obvious to the judge.
manipulation was
Station has to
totally
be
obvious.
very obvious.
It was obvious. I still can't get over that. I'm like, how could that be nature? And then if I put it in nature, they'll DQ it because it's post-processed.
It's a rock in a hard place.
Well, you just
Yeah,
don't put it back in.
exactly.
You just don't put it in.
okay,
Okay.
thank you.
The other thing, if you want to get some idea of, you know, what images go where, go on to the NJFCC website. It's njfcc.org, and take a look at some of the winning images, and that'll give you an idea of what people have entered.
Okay, thank you. And does anybody know when the Photorama is going to be?
It's going to be on April 6th.
Oh, shoot. Maybe you might want to re-auction that off. I'm going to be out of town.
Yeah, Are you going to shoot the eclipse too? That's where
No,
I'm
I'm
going.
going to Europe.
Oh,
Oh, nice.
that's nice.
Where are you going?
We're going to start at Prague and we're going to go to Budapest and then to Vienna.
Wow.
Oh, nice. Are you taking the cruise?
It's
No?
it's a land tour. Land tour.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right,
But
that should be very nice.
Not quite. Yeah. So, but I'm gonna miss that one. I couldn't find it on any of the things on the website for.
No, I haven't. I'm in the process now of designing the whole thing for to be posted. It should be up by the end of the week.
Okay, well, it looks like you could re-auction that off if you want.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
all right.
Oh, you won the oh,
I won.
Yeah.
oh, I got
Okay.
it.
I thought I was gonna be gone in March, but you could have had it in March because last year it was in March, so.
Yeah, and this year what happened was Tamron is again sponsoring it, and the two people that are presenting needed to do it on April 6th. That was the only place we could overlap their schedules.
Next year.
Oh, I have to say goodnight to everyone. Thank you. It
Yeah,
was a
good night.
great evening.
And
Okay.
I'll say goodnight to everybody
Okay.
and see you on the next Zoom, which will be on whatever
22nd.
22nd.
All right.
Good night.
Alrighty
Good
then.
night.
Okay, good
night.
night. Good night, everybody.